Hello, everyone, and welcome to another RocGrowth event. And I think many of you could have certainly been forgiven today, given our unusually high weather, great weather today, that you could have gone off and you could have spent time maybe even sunbathing today. But instead, you came here on March 1st, and I think that's to a large extent really a reflection of the very interesting company and very interesting entrepreneurs that we're going to hear from today. With us today, we have Rick Plympton, who is CEO of Optimax, and Mike Mandina, who is president of Optimax. And this particular company is not a traditional success story. Their website states it very well. It says, "We leverage our optics manufacturing technology for programs that benefit mankind and projects that defend our freedom." Rick and Mike have fostered a corporate culture that truly empowers and dignifies the 300 people who work there, and there meaning here in the greater Rochester area. And it's nothing short of cutting edge, and it's fun. And welcome to both of you. And maybe we just get started. Rick, can you tell us what is Optimax? What is it all about?
So just to give you an overview of Optimax, we were founded in 1991, and Optimax adopted computer-controlled machining technology for manufacturing brittle material, optical components. And we were one of the first companies to do that. The technology was developed at the University of Rochester, and Optimax and a company called OptiPro commercialized that technology. Actually, OptiPro builds the machines that we use, so we're OptiPro's largest customer. And in 1995, I joined the company. Mike had a team of about 10 people that had this really cool technology. They could literally make optics 10 times faster than conventional methods using this computer-controlled machining technology. And I came on board to help create awareness for this new capability. And just to kind of put it in perspective for you, normally it takes 10 weeks to make a precision optic, and Optimax can do it in a week. Now that's like if you want to compete with Domino's, right? They deliver pizzas in 30 minutes. If you could deliver pizza in 3 minutes before the commercial break's over, you could make a lot of sports advocates real happy, right? And you think about that for a couple seconds and you go, wow, that's kind of silly because nobody can make a pizza and deliver it to your house in 3 minutes. Well, it's true. Nobody's done it yet. But someday somebody might do it. And that's what Optimax did for the optics industry. We started making optics so fast, nobody could believe that we could do it. And actually, in the early days, we would dare people to give us orders, and we gave a money-back guarantee. You know, if we didn't get the optics done quickly and delivered on time, we'd credit back any unearned premium. But if we did get it done on time, you know, they'd pay a little bit more. The faster they wanted the optics, they paid a little bit more. Now to back up a little bit, what we make is optical components from about 2 millimeters diameter, so little tiny optics. It might go into medical systems up to half-meter diameter, about 20 inches in diameter. So we make a pretty wide range of optics for defense applications, aerospace, medical life sciences, and lithography. Like we make a lot of optics for machines and metrology that build electronic components that go into our smartphones and computers and things like that. So that's kind of the market that we play in. We're not a systems integrator. We're a component supplier to these bigger organizations that need high precision optics to achieve their goals.
And there's no doubt from what you said that being able to deliver things 10 times faster is obviously a key value proposition. Mike, what are the other differences or differentiators that Optimax has?
Well, I think that, and Richard, thanks for doing this. I think this is terrific. And you know, it's more than one thing, all right, when you create a business. And, you know, we have to have, you know, everybody that ever talks about successful companies talks about their workforce. But it's also a design of how the workforce operates and the culture within Optimax. So, you know, Rick's point about the quick delivery that we do, the 1 week delivery, you know, other companies can possibly do that, but when you actually have a system and a structure that supports that type of activity, it's not just because you're working people overtime or disrupting everybody else's flow and commitments, that it's actually kind of hardwired in our whole workforce is responsive for it. And so we have systems and we have people, and we integrate all that together, and it just flows. And we did it from, almost day one. And so now at the size we are, it's just part of our process and how we do work and how we think about work. And to be clear, and not everything we do is, less than 10% of our work is this 1 week stuff. But it is part of our brand, and it's part of how we're viewed in the marketplace. And we are the go-to company for this niche space of precision optics in the U.S. and oftentimes internationally as well. We do get international requests to do expedited deliveries as well.
So one of the things that was extremely impressive to me as I learned about the company is the fact that, and I know you can't name or talk about most of the companies you work with, but one of the ones you could talk about was NASA, and in particular the Mars rover.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that project and maybe just give us an idea about not so much the speed, but the quality that's expected of you as well?
Well, when you make something for NASA and they're going to launch it out in space, there's no chance to fix it later if it's not quite right, So through the years, we've made optics for many different projects at NASA, and some of the most notable ones are the Mars rover, Spirit, Opportunity, and Curiosity. We did all the camera lenses for those, as well as the camera lenses for New Horizons, which got a lot of press a couple years ago when it reached Pluto. So it's just wicked cool when we can work on programs where we can help mankind see something for the first time. And it's each year we work on about a half a dozen different projects for NASA. In fact, we're currently making optics for what NASA's calling the 2020 rover. They haven't given it a name yet. They just call it the 2020 rover. We're making some optics for that. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's extremely exciting. So one of the things that I think would be of interest is that this is a somewhat unusual scenario. I mean, you now have 300 people in the company, but both of you came when the company was extremely small in 1991, 95. I think just a handful of people when you were there. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how did each of you come to your role, and how were those early years?
Go ahead.
Maybe you first.
You came
there
first.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a classic startup from a standpoint of the basement of a barn. One person, no phone, no letterhead. Had a name, and it was incorporated, and it did have a baseline of some type of equipment. But when I joined the company, and because I'd been in the industry, and this is something I think is useful for anybody that's in industry, your reputation travels with you. And so I had been fired from my prior employer, but I had a good reputation. Apparently my employer thought I was incompetent, but that aside, the other people in industry thought maybe I was okay. So when it comes to starting a business and you need credit, because I had no money, Optimax is a credit card-based sweat equity company. We had no investors of any magnitude, and it was just you did something, took some money, put it back in the company, contained how much you paid yourself to what you needed to live on, and we just go from there. And when we hired people, we paid them minimum wage. It was tough to give them what they were really worth, and trying to keep them while we're in the face of larger corporations hiring and develop the talent, and the talent would leave because we couldn't afford to pay them, in this vicious cycle of employment and employee development, and trying to make enough money to invest in and just going. So this was the beginning of Optimax. So I only had one nervous breakdown back in the barn back in the day, and if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And then we started to develop. And then when Rick came on, the access to marketing and sound pricing and that type of awareness of what the value was we provided, and then being able to leverage that was really important. Of course, so this is a combination of call it a business philosophy and a strategy around the quick turn, which became our branding, and we coupled with new technology, as Rick was talking about, that came out of the University of Rochester. We partnered with the company that was building the machines that were brand new machines. We bought the third Opticam machine. That's what they were called back in the day. We bought the third one that was ever made, and we leveraged that. And for us, that was a big deal. That was a $350,000 machine with a company that was being run on my credit cards, and wondering where payroll was going to come from, and signing up for that type of commitment, believing that we could actually turn some money with this machine. And the machine was so large, we couldn't actually fit it in the barn, so we had to run that machine in a different location and then move the parts back and forth to the barn where we could do the finishing. I mean, it was, it was. I'm sweating right now. I just started.
Have some water.
Yeah, okay,
You'll be
so-
okay.
Yeah, okay, well, anyway, we survived. And so, and then as we started to get some critical mass, we got a grant that helped develop some of our technology, and off we were.
Now, Rick, when you got there, was there still a barn, and were you still running things off
No,
Mike's credit cards?
Yeah,
or?
when I got there, they had moved into a garage shop. It wasn't a real building. It was a garage shop.
It was,
All right.
well, we did the best we could.
Everything's relative, yes.
But yeah, for the most part, the business was still being run off Mike's credit cards. And my risk tolerance is a little low. It's not the same as his, right? So one of the first things I did was work with Mike to help secure some business. So we had some sales, and we could start generating cash flow. And then Mike and I worked really hard on creating a business plan for the organization, and trying to define where we were and where we were going to go with this business. What do we want to be when we grow up? And so these are some of the key things we were trying to address. And with that, once we had a business plan in hand, we called a meeting in a suite downtown Rochester, invited 13 different banks to come and attend, and this was a tough time in the business. And two of the 13 banks, two of us gave us time of day after the presentation was done. Like 11 of them walked out the door. And gratefully, M&T has been very supportive since those early days.
Now, one of the things I think I was as impressed with as hearing about the Mars rover is a very unique aspect of how you interact and work with your employees. And I think it certainly represents, I'm sure, kind of your vision and your kind of ethics as human beings, and also probably the fact that you did manage to build up the company through sweat equity and credit cards, and probably have a little bit more freedom. But can you talk a little bit about the unique kind of monthly sharing that you do with employees?
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah. So when I came into the business, my primary function was sales, to work the sales end and the marketing. And Mike came to me one day and he said, so, we're trying to figure out what kind of salary I should get and whether or not I should get a commission. I had just come off of 10 years of working for a multinational corporation in our industry. And it was typical that you get, somewhere around 20, 30% commission. I said, look, whatever's fair for me, let's give it to everybody in the company. And so we sat down and started working out a strategy where we could reward not only the salesperson in the organization, but everybody. It takes a team effort to deliver high precision optics on time and within quality. So since those early days, we developed a monthly profit sharing program where every month 25% of our profit gets divvied out to our employees. And Mike and I are on the same bonus plan as everybody else.
Well, and I'll mention. Well, I hold your applause for 1 second, and then do it after this. So last year, about $2 million was given out in bonuses to their employees. Now you can applaud.
And I love hearing the guys on the floor say, "Hey, this month we're getting bonus checks with a comma in it." It's like a week's extra pay, for that month. And the beauty of the bonus plan, a lot of you probably grew up here in the Rochester area, and so you're familiar with Kodak used to give out an annual bonus, right? But the problem with that is it became an entitlement. People expected a big check once a year. It didn't change daily behavior. So what we do at Optimax, we do it every month. So at the first day of the new month, today, we wipe the slate clean. We start out at 0-0, and all month, our whole team, everybody in the company is working together to try to ship as much as possible, every project out the door on time, 100% quality, so that at the end of the month, we make a profit again and we get a nice bonus check. And that's really been one of the key puzzle pieces, in our corporate culture that helps ensure that everybody on our team is making sure that our customers are successful. Not just that us being successful is a derivative effect of our customers being successful.
One of the things that's very interesting to think about in somewhat historical context, is, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, is that back in the 1990s, there were 300 plus companies that were doing optics around the United States, a lot of regional players, and a lot of them smaller ones. I mean, they typically maybe had 50 employees or so. And there was a huge consolidation that happened over time, where now there's maybe 100. And not only are you part of that 100, but you expanded to a 300-person company. And I think this idea of how do you scale, I think that's of interest to a lot of people. Can you maybe, Mike, start off by talking a little bit about what was that scaling process like, and what are the things that had to happen for it to happen successfully?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. One is back in the Great Recession, we had some really tough decisions to make because, like many of you who were in business or involved in businesses at that time, we were in a tough spot. The orders just evaporated, and we had to make some decisions on what to do. So we were about 120 people, if I remember correctly, at the time. And so we talked to the workforce about it, and we had to make some tough calls. So we did about a 20% on the average, 15% wage reduction for everybody in the company. And we laid off 10 people, and of which I think 4 of those people we really meant permanent layoffs because they just weren't cutting it anyway. And then we didn't give that money back for about 6 months or 9 months, something like that. And so everybody worked, and we lost a total of 3 people left the company during that time frame. Now, I have to say there weren't that many opportunities for other people to go necessarily, but it speaks a lot to, rather than lay off a bunch of people to meet our cost structure, everybody was willing to take a hit. And it was a significant hit. And then we were able to bring it back. You know, the company didn't lose too much. Actually, we ended up making money that year, which was incredible. And, you know, not a great amount of money, but enough to, my banker's here, but enough to keep the bank happy. And then, and we were able to, and then when the recession we came out of the recession, we were able to just go because we had our workforce. And then this issue about, and as we get to plateaus, at 50 people, you hit a ceiling, and you can't figure out, you can't scale what you have. And at about 120 people, we couldn't scale what we had. We were just kept trying stuff and lean manufacturing, quality things, Kaizen events, you name it, we did it. We could not successfully get back past 120 people and really bring things to the bottom line. So we have been on a track for about the last 3 years where we're just empowering people. So anybody that's a manager is doing less management, and I think the way to frame it is really extreme benevolent management, where the manager's role is only to help the person do their job. That's really what they're there for. They're not there to tell them what to do, because the person should know what to do. And so we're working on information, providing information, and Colin, one of our IT guys, we're really data-driven people, is here. And so he's done a tremendous amount of work getting information that's in computers stored somewhere out to the person who needs it so they can make intelligent decisions. And then we don't have the manager telling them what to do. So our organization is getting at 300 people. We're flatter now than we were when we were at 120 people. And the person doing the work is more empowered and has more authority. And we are just at the beginning of what that looks like. So, and the more we do that, the less Rick does in terms of telling people what to do, the less I do, and the more I just say, what do you think we should do? And we just say yes. I mean, our thing is to say yes. Somebody wants to do it, we say yes. And unless we got a really extreme reason not to do it, we just say yes. And the company the sales have grown, the profitability has grown, the employee engagement's grown, everything has been positive. Not one negative thing has come out of that. And so we're having less and less control on what's going on. I know less today about what's going on at Optimax than any time in my career. And the company is doing far better than any time when I felt I knew it was on top of everything. So there's something to that. And I found out I don't need to know what's going on. Okay, I just need to know that people are happy and engaged and that they're empowered to do what they think is the right thing to do. And if they make a bad mistake, they learn from it and they're not likely to make that bad mistake again. And the learning, the organizational learning is phenomenal. So this to me is a huge thing. It's called TEAL, and it's based on a book on reinventing orgs. It's something like holacracy. So those of you who are in the organizational structure, and we're working the hell out of this, and we have no idea what we're doing, but we're just kind of moving forward and just trusting the organic nature of our humans that work at Optimax, and it's really working out very well. And so we're trying to understand how this should work. And we think the scale at 300 can go to 3,000, as we work this, and it won't be that difficult. Actually, I think getting to 3,000 might be easier than getting from 150 to 300. That was, or at least getting from 120 to 150. That was a difficult challenge in doing it profitably.
I mean, it's interesting that you talk about this because I think that there are really two challenges typically to scaling. And one of them is, especially people who were there early on when there are 3 or 10 people there, it's them letting go. And then the second part is also finding people who are the kind of employees that really want to take ownership of situations. And I have no doubt that profit sharing is a big part of why people are loyal. Are there other things that you do, whether it's around being able to kind of manage, assess, help grow people that you think make for this unique company culture where you can not always know what's going on and have that be a good thing?
Going to build on what you were saying?
Yeah,
so
spin out thing.
Yeah, let's get to that. All right. So I just want to build on what Michael was saying. So we both started our careers on the production floor. And so we have a fundamental belief that most people get up in the morning and they want to create value. And Mike and I are the kind of guys, we don't really like being told what to do all the time. So we try to create a corporate culture that supports that. At Optimax, it's what we're doing doesn't work unless people feel empowered. And you've probably heard about companies that do a 360 review for their management team, right? To try to assess how their management team's doing and try to elevate their skills or kind of refine what they're doing so that they perform a little better. At Optimax, we do a 360 on everybody in the company, and we call it a peer review process. So what's really powerful about it is the person being reviewed will fill out a self-evaluation, and there's 10 metrics. 5 have to do with their skill set, 5 have to do with their attitude or their team performance. And then their peers, there'll be about a dozen of their peers that will fill out the same evaluation. And then their supervisor or coach can sit down with them and kind of do a comparison and see if there's alignment. And if there is, that's great. Then the conversation is just about, all right, what's your learning plan for the next year? So one of the things we're really focused on is making sure that everybody in the company has a learning plan, and every year they're getting better and better, and we're building a stronger and stronger team. So that's really an important part of our growth and strengthening the team each year as the corporation matures. One of the things that Mike and I are firm believers in, we live in change. If we might have the perfect solution for today, but the market's going to change tomorrow. So we need to change with it. So whatever we're doing, we just know we've got to modify and grow and change. We can't just keep doing the same thing over and over, or we won't be successful.
What's been, and this is, I think, the final question, then we're going to go to audience, some audience questions for those of you who are thinking of some questions, but what's been the role of being here in Rochester? You obviously mentioned the University of Rochester lineage to the technology, but what else has it, what have been the positives, especially, I think, in the context of the optics industry?
Just talk about workforce development and fame.
So Rochester, and Rick and I both grew up here, so we know the community. Clearly a legacy of optics and photonics in Rochester, and we're part of that. The overall, Rochester, like many regions, has experienced the aversion to technology. So in going from 1 to 300 employees, we faced where does this skilled workforce come from? These people we have are smart. They work with their hands and their minds. And anybody that our optics, some optics are valued at around $50, and some are valued at $50,000, single pieces. And so anybody, 20 hands touch these things as they go through their process, and they're perishable. So people have to care. They have to be smart about what they're doing. We deal with all different types of materials, and there's all kinds of idiosyncrasies with some of the product we are working with. And it's very much a team effort, so you have this cultural thing. Rochester is a good region for people that generally care. There's a good work ethic and a good value. The issue of workforce, I mean, Optimax is a leading company working with the community colleges and the BOCES and organizations that work in workforce. I think any of the workforces that work on manufacturing activity or any of the organizations, either Rick and I have been on the boards, or we are currently on the boards, and this has been a big part, or our employees and people that work at Optimax are active in those organizations, and on advisory committees with the community colleges and the BOCES. And this is just part of what you can say, well, it's nice that we do that for the community, but we're very self-serving because we need a skilled workforce. And guess what? A lot of the other firms in our types of businesses need the same thing. And it turns out it's a national issue. And, so we work at the federal level and we work at the local level to try to take some attention around the skilled workforce area. And Rochester just happens to be rich, I think, in terms of easy to work with organizations of people that want to help solve the problem. Now, we still have the problem, so that's unfortunate that we're not on top of it in a way that the community would make it so we didn't have to do this, but it's being done and it's very receptive, and we're making good strides. So between the optics, the great community that we work in, and the collaboration that goes along between organizations, which I think hasn't always been like that, but since the demise of the big three, I think there's been a coming together of the smaller mid-sized organizations, including the community colleges and universities, in a way that I don't think it ever has certainly didn't happen 20 years ago. And so, but now it's highly collaborative, and you can really get some stuff done with people and organizations working together that historically considered themselves to be adversarial. And I think that's really speaks well for Rochester. And you should know that, Rochester, I personally go to D.C., Rick's been to D.C., and we get to compare ourselves as a community against other communities that are working in a public-private partnership sense. And Rochester is brought up as one of the leading communities on how to work together and collaborate, and across the whole nation. And so, and that's why a couple of years ago, Joe Biden came here to announce after the State of the Union address about a workforce initiative. That recognition is at the highest level within government. I'm not sure about this administration, but certainly that administration, it was. And I think it'll carry over, frankly, into the Trump administration as well.
Well, I mean, we're going to take questions in a minute, but before we do, Rick and Mike, I think Optimax is a company that I think this community can be extremely proud of, and there's many elements of what you do that I think are fantastic, and hopefully the entrepreneurs in the room have learned a lot today. Can we give them a round of applause?